Well, hi everyone, welcome to this webinar on what's new in Ingenuity 6. It's a little bit of time since we've done the last webinar, but we've been very busy updating Ingenuity and we're delighted now to have rolled it out to all our customers, and it's now anyone who now goes on the Ingenuity platform will get all the latest features. So what I'd like to talk about today, I'll just take you through some of the main features of what's in Ingenuity. We'll be talking about how it's quicker, how we've got new security, we've got new connectivity features, some new trending features. There's updates to the calculations, some new UI components, and also some new features on the mobile app and integrations with Azure's Office 365 integration and Power Apps. So one of the first things we'd like to shout about is the speed increases. We're seeing speed increases of between 30 to 70% now. So depending on your use case, the trending is much faster thanks to some smart caching. So when you use data points for the same tags in calc expressions, these are cached and reused. We've got multi-threading at a low level for retrieving calcs. This sounds simple. It means that now calculations are broken down and the elements are run in parallel. But that's actually been very difficult to implement in practice because of all the different ways that you can get things wrong and things can come in different orders. And you can get what's called race conditions. But we've got that working now and it's made a big improvement. And we're also better at terminating processes that are called orphaned. When you start something off, say someone loads a page and then decides they don't want it, if it's a big calculation, that can be left running on the server. And we're better at spotting when that's happened and killing it, which frees up memory. So we've got a little demo here of some performance examples. What I'm going to show you is a trend where we're going to load 15 tags and then we're going to reload them from the cache, and that's just as a benchmark. So you can see, well, how fast is it if we load a trend direct from cache, which is the fastest possible way that you can get something, and then we'll compare with getting a year's worth of data from the source by extending the time range to 2 years so that the earlier year has to go back to the source. Okay, so here we've got a trend that's been loaded. I hit reload on the trend and that's it. It comes back within like a second from the cache. So now let's take that trend and we're going to extend the time period back to 2 years. Now we're still going to ask for 1,000 points across the data range. So the first trend that we had, 1,000 points over 1 year, is going to be downsampled to 500 points, and then we'll go request another 500 points from the server. So here's our 1 year trend. We'll change it. We'll set the time back to a year before, and we'll hit go, and you'll see that that loads the prior year then in something like 2 seconds. And then let's do that again, but for a 3-year trend. So now we're going to downsample the existing 2 years that were in the cache and add another year to it. So here we'll take that, we'll add another year on, or go back another year, press go, and you see again, it's pretty quick. Now it's retrieving data very, very fast. So then I did a test by adding a Totalized 2 calc. This is one of the new calculations that we've got, we'll talk about later. So now we're going to increase the time range from a year to 2 years, and we'll see how quickly that recalculates. So here's our year's worth of calculations. Set the time back a year and click go. And again, that runs extremely fast. It pulls back the raw data and the totalized very, very quickly. So then on security, not too much to say on this other than we're now integrated with Azure's and Microsoft single sign-on, which means that you can use a single user login to log into all the Eigen stuff, and that can be federated against your Active Directory running in Azure. We've got some new connectivity features, so we now have an interface to Cognite's data fusion platform. We've got the time series connector working. We also have events working in development, and soon after that we'll have the contextualized data as well. But here's a little example of the Cognite interface running. It's very performant. Here's a page where we're reloading that with 24 hours of data last day and also a year's worth from tag, and it loads nice and quickly. So we're pleased with that. It's looking good. And then just as an example, here's a trend with data from 3 different data historians. So I've got data here from an IP21, a series from Cognite, and also a tag that's been imported from a spreadsheet. And this is not possible on any other platform that I know, but we're just here, we can just load it and you see that the data comes in. It's still very performant. The trend will load at the speed of the slowest source. In this case, they're all quick, so it's not an issue at all. Here we can go and just extend it then back a year, the test like we did before. So this is going to now pull it from the source. Takes a little bit longer because obviously one of the sources is not as fast as the others, but it's still good. It's still performant, and you can make calculations by combining the data from those 3, whatever you want to do. So some of the improvements in charting. So we've got now a new grouping function in the user interface in the chart component, and this allows you to take a time series set of data and group it by something such as an hour, day, week, month, year. Here's how you do it. If you reveal the trend options in the legend, you've now got an option, a new option, group by, and then there'll be various fixed time intervals. And then you have an option of what statistic do you want to use to drive the height of the bar or the number that's plotted for that group. If you pick, say, the maximum, that would give you the highest value in a day. And if it's a total, if you're totalizing a value through a day, then obviously that will show you the total at the end of the day because it will be the highest. But you could equally show the minimum or the average or the count of values within that group. So that's really neat. I think that opens up the possibility for some really nice displays now. And then on to calculations. So we just mentioned the Totalized 2 calculation earlier. The new functionality in that, the big difference is its handling of calendar intervals. So things like months, which are uneven periods of time ranging from 28 to 31 days. We've got a new % deviation function. We have a user interface totalizer, which is a very accurate single number, but it's not a trendable feature, but it's for use in reporting. And we also have another reporting function called Totalized period, which allows you to make a compound total based on information from multiple sources. So let's have a little bit, look a bit more at those. Totalized 2, the calendar date handling now, it has a different setup to the original Totalize. So you can put things like the start of the period can just say begin day or begin month. You don't have to anchor it using for example, the year, day, month, and a timestamp, or using the just hour. If you wanted a day, you could have just anchored it to midnight, say. You can also define the period as day, month, quarter, and year, instead of just an interval of hours and days. And so on the right is the options you use for putting in, like the Totalized before, you put in the tag and the window definition and the anchor, but obviously now you can put in those text definitions as well as timestamps. And we also have this 2 options at the end here called the range totalize hint and single point totalize hint. Now these are new controls that allow you to tune the speed and accuracy of the result. Sometimes you might want a very fast result and you're not so worried about the accuracy. And in this case, you can set the values to 1, which will use 1 point of raw data for every interpolated point. And if you just need a single point, so for example, if you're showing a value in report, you can a value of 1 will push the averaging down to the historian to use, which is the fastest. So rather than pulling the points and then trying to totalize them, we use an average for a previous period, which gives us an extremely quick and pretty accurate estimate. But you can also ask it to use raw data or some other number of raw points per interpolated point. So it means that gives you a bit more control over how fast you want the number to return versus how accurate do you want it to be. And then here's an example of the Totalized 2 function in a trend. And you can see here, we've got some examples. In fact, if I play this video while I talk, you can see that we hover over it. So you can see that the values are resetting at the start of the month. And at the end of the month, the orange and the green series reset. The black data is the raw signal. And then the green series is the quarter. So that keeps going and it doesn't reset until the end of the quarter there. So now we've got a quarter starting in January. See, the green series keeps going, but the orange periods reset every month. And then finally at the end of the quarter, at the end of March, everything resets, goes through. So previously, the totalized function, you've had to define a quarter as 90 or 91 days, and then you've had to edit it a little bit when you're in each quarter. Now you don't have to do that. You can just say quarter and leave it running and it'll work. Okay, the totalized period function. So this allows us to make a compound total based on the information from different data sources of increasing quality. The use case that this was built for was the case where you want to know the projected total at the end of the period, for example, quarter or year. At the start of the period, so let's take a year, you've got your forward forecast for oil production for the whole year. So your best guess at your end of year production is by adding up your forecast data. But then over time, you start producing oil or gas. And so you can replace that forecast data with actual data. Now, that actual data tends to go through a process of first of all being measured or metered, then allocated, and then finally reconciled. And your reconciled number is typically your most accurate number because it's based on a fiscal meter. It's corrected at the end of every month by being back allocated to the wells. So while on a daily basis, you may get an allocated number for the previous day, on a monthly basis, you'll get the most accurate reconciled data. So as the year progresses, you want to use reconciled data if it's available. If it's not available, you then want to use allocated data as far as that's available. And when that ceases to be available, then you might use forecast data going forward. So if I wanted to know the number to say yesterday, and we're doing this on the 27th of April, so I might have reconciled data up to the end of March. I might then have allocated data between the end of March and today, which is the 27th of April, or maybe up to yesterday, which is the 26th. And then going forward, I'd have to use my forecast data to estimate the rest of it. So that's how you get this compound total based on best available information at the current time. It's not a trendable number, it's a single point that is valid for now. Okay, some updates for the UI that are driven by the data model. So we have a new object template component that allows you to drive the content of the page based on the properties of an object in the data model. So we've got, what we're going to show you now is a little demo of making a page using the object template. We're going to add a KPI and we're going to add a trend, and then they're going to be populated by the properties on a well object from the data model. So this is just a view of the data model that's going to drive it first. Here's a well. And then if we view the connected components on a well, there's a number of properties. For example, the sand rate, this one is maybe the wellhead pressure. There has historian tag, there we are, wellhead pressure. So we'll use that later on in this example, but you can see there's historian tags connected. It's linked to other objects and other things like documents as well. So then when we come onto the page, we've added our object template at the top of the page. We go into settings and we choose the object class. So we're going to choose wellbore, which is what we've just seen in the model. And we're going to, the property to list is what to show in the drop-down list. We're going to show the wellbore's code or name. So now we can see all the wellbores in the data model. So then we'll add, oh, I've just gone a bit too far, have I? So we've added a KPI there, and now we've added it from a template. Now in the data settings, we can choose the object template. Instead of linking it to a historian data source, we link it to the object template, and that exposes all the available properties. We're going to drive this one from the choke, the object that's related by choke, by the relationship choke, and it's got units of percent. We'll change the maximum. We know it's out of 100, so we'll change it to be a maximum of 101. And there we go. So now that's showing the choke position for wellbore A12. And if we change that wellbore, that would obviously update. So now let's edit the trend. Same again, we go into select source and we're going to choose the object template. Now I'm going to add the choke, downhole pressure and temperature, and some other properties. We'll add the gas lift rate and the oil rate from the last well test. And down here, here's the wellhead pressure that we saw when we looked at the data model, and we'll also have the wellhead temperature. So now there we go. There's all the series added. And I'll just change the axes of some of them to make it work. So I'm going to move this over to the right axes so everything lines up. Just makes it a bit easier to read. There we go, happy with that. And we just put it in seamless mode. So now, when we select a different well, everything on this page will update based on the properties of that object. So we've just made something simple here. We've just made a simple dial and a trend, but you could have quite a complex looking dashboard here and have it update. You could have it overlaid on a drawing perhaps. There we go, just going through, changing the objects we've selected. There's an interesting one, just to show it's not always 99. We've got one with a much lower choke. And then here, the final little demo. Also, from this object, we can say show details, and this will just list all the data connected to this object in the model for now. It's like the common menu. This is the common menu itself, which pops up and shows you the properties, just as if you'd right-clicked on the object from search or somewhere else. But it gives you instant access then to all the related data, the contextualized data from that object in the data model. And just like before, you could click on an object and navigate through, find something else, add it to your basket. Okay, some of the other UI components we've got. There's a new manual data entry component. This is fantastic because it allows you to start replacing spreadsheets where you might have manual data that's captured on a walk round or other value like lab data that isn't measured directly from a sensor. It's available from the drop down, so just go like the other components, you can add it as a macro. And we've got a little demo here of how to set one up. So once you've added the component, you add a row and then you configure its tag that you want it to write to. And you can also do things like the default timestamp if you want validation, if you want to display all the components of manual entry or hide some of them. And then moving on, here we're going to set the date. So I'm going to set the date back in time. And you can use the current time or type in a time, and then I'm going to put in a value. And here I've got all the validation activated. So I click OK, there it is, it's written it to the database. And you see there now my spark line's been updated with the latest value. You can embed these in quite complex, in KPI components to make data input sheets. So here we've got a KPI component with a number of different data points, some from the historian, others from them that will be manually entered. The validation, or rather all the user confirmations, are disabled, so the user can literally type a value in and press enter, move to the next one, and it'll have written it. So this is like a full input sheet to replace a spreadsheet. Okay, we also have a UI totalizer. So this is where you want to get a very accurate total something. Again, you just add it. It's a macro you add from the drop down. This will give you a total of the raw data from an underlying data point. You add the tag or the calculation just like you did before. You select the start and end time and the rate, the units that the value is going to be in, and then press go and it will return the totalized value there. It also shows a trend of that tag within the range that you've asked for. The green and the red bars are the start and the end time. Okay, some updates on the mobile app. So we now have the possibility to create and subscribe to group and also set up default groups. So one of the main driver for this was behaviors that we saw emerging where actually you have super users and they need to manage content on behalf of interested parties. So like in this diagram here, someone makes some useful content and groups of folks like, say, managers, supervisors, offshore personnel are interested in seeing this data but don't have the time to make the content themselves. We've already had the possibility to subscribe to different dashboards that other people have made, but that still required you to go in and do that yourself and find the different dashboards and add them. So now by creating a group of dashboards, you just have to subscribe to that group and you'll get everything within that group. If new content's added or if anything's changed, you'll automatically get it. So to do that now in the library, what we have is these groups over on the right hand side, and folks can just go in, select the group that they like and then add it to their dashboards and it will be there, it'll appear on their phone. And so in this example here, a user's subscribed to a lot of different groups, and you can see by the little icon in the top left of each dashboard that it's been imported from the library. It's not one they're managing, so there's no edit button. They just get that dashboard as it's managed by someone else. And you can see the list of the groups along the top. There's a default group, a group X, training, test, management, and these are done by some Eigen users and also Mickey Mouse. We've now got integration with Azure. We've got a new Eigen Events connector that's available in the Azure App Store under the Power App connectors. So you can find it here under connectors if you search for Eigen Events. This exposes our Events API. So events that are available in the Events API can be used to trigger workflows in Azure apps. So for example, here, this is just the basic structure of it, but you'd add the Eigen Events connector and then you select the event type or ID, and then you could use it to say, send you a notification or trigger a workflow, like a list, making a SharePoint list or something, or asking for approval. So this is really great because this is opening up Ingenuity to lots of different users or workflows, and to use apps outside Ingenuity as well for making stuff. So I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, please do type them into the chat or let me know. Feel free to contact us at info@eigen.co or email me directly. That's murray.callander@eigen.co, and we'll be delighted to answer your questions.
There's a question in the chat. It's what's next for Ingenuity?
We have a roadmap of new features. There's the continued development of things like the Azure integration. So we are now, Ingenuity is now available in the Azure marketplace. We have plans to continue that evolution so that you can actually deploy it fully from within the Azure store and have it integrated into your Microsoft subscription. We also want to evolve the events connector to add much more, all the events available within Ingenuity, so they can drive things within other workflows and Azure. We're continuing to work the Cognite connector, so there'll be more functionality coming in that area as well. And we're looking at some really cool stuff. There's some new use cases around automating verification. So starting to integrate Python, so custom-made Python scripts, more that sit to the side of Ingenuity and use our Python library, but allow users to now use the Ingenuity connectors and functionality and visual tools, but write scripts on the side to start automating tasks such as checking the validity of a blowdown event or equipment failure modes. So yeah, there's lots coming. There's a lot of investment going in on the platform now. I think it's just accelerating year on year now as more and more customers come on board.
There's
Thanks.
another question for you, Murray, in the chat. It's how does Ingenuity support a CI/CD pipeline, and can you give an example?
Okay, good question. So we use CI/CD development processes internally to build and deploy Ingenuity. That means that when a new piece of code is written, it's automatically tested, added to the build pipeline, and then built, if it passes, included in the code, and then made available for deployment continuously. Ingenuity itself is not designed as a tool for DevOps. We use DevOps processes to build it, but Ingenuity is designed for oil and gas operations. And so I suppose we wouldn't be a first choice of tool for managing a CI/CD pipeline. There's very good open source tools like Jenkins or Microsoft's Octopus. They've got their own deployment and development and deployment pipelines as well. And I wouldn't compete with those, I don't think. Okay, well, thanks for attending, folks. Great to see everyone. The recording will be made available as well on the website, and we'll send that around to people. And in the meantime, until the next webinar, have a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.